Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com and Bet365 Sportsbook. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined by Justin Perri, college basketball betting analyst for Shot Quality, talking about Saturday's monster college basketball slate, the best single-day non-conference slate of college hoops this season and probably up until March Madness. So get ready. Tons of great games, tons of bets to discuss with you between Justin and I. But first off, Justin, you saw some great non-conference action at MTE over Thanksgiving weekend. So talk to me about it. What games did you see? You got RJ Lewis in your pin tweet, fanboying over a 21-year-old college basketball player. But I love it. I love it.
Oh, what an intro. Thank you, of course, Eli, for having me back on the podcast. Always a pleasure to talk a little hoops. I mean, look, we have not had a good college basketball team in New York State, let alone New York City, in a decade. And that was Syracuse, right? Back in the day, in the 2013 time period there when they were atop Ken Palm's rankings. St. John's is that team right now. And I'm very excited to have a top 10 player in the Ken Pomeroy ratings in New York as well. And bumping into him, not planned at all, right? Like, so this was you can go look at it on my Twitter. It's sit in the front entranceway waiting for a car to pick us up to leave Baha Mar, and he's just hanging out there with I don't even know what other player was hanging out on an ATV, and I was just like, no way is the player for St. John's just chilling in some Eric Emanuel camo shorts. I was like, whoa, yo, what's up? I'm a huge fan. And I got to pick real fast, and I told him that he's him, and to keep driving to the hoop because that's how he really opens up the offense.
Did he agree with you?
That was great. It was great. So I was at Baha Mar and I was Tennessee, Baylor, Virginia, and St. John's. So I got to sit right on the floor, saw a top 10 play right in front of me with Davon Smith blocking that shot against Baylor, jumping up 3 feet into the air. So it was a great experience. Highly recommend it for anyone. I mean, seeing these teams that play in front of 20, 30,000 people in March playing in front of 800 in a ballroom, a high school gymnasium type feel in a hotel ballroom is quite the experience. And, they have all the amenities out there too. So big shout out to BD Global and the Baha Mar group for hooking it all up and making it awesome. So definitely recommend it.
Hey, we'll take him as a sponsor if you guys got him as a sponsor.
Well, let's do it.
To be fair. But Justin, and for everybody listening and watching here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your favorite podcast, we're going to jump into the Saturday college basketball slate with our biggest edges using KenPom projections as we record this here on Thursday, December 12th. We don't have any official odds yet up from Bet365. We'll sprinkle in some Final Four futures, at least one from me, with one of the teams we're discussing here on the board for the Saturday card, but no odds on the game-by-game action. So we'll be using KenPom projections to kind of decipher where the line and total may open up for each individual game. So, Justin, without further ado, let's tip it off. 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Memphis at Clemson. KenPom projecting this one. Clemson -7, both teams being the Tigers, but Clemson Tigers -7 at home. The Tigers, as in Clemson, 9-1 straight up this year, beating Kentucky last week outright at home as a short home dog. The Memphis Tigers 7-2 straight up after falling to Arkansas State in Memphis on Sunday afternoon. You look at Memphis overall this season, 275th nationally in turnover percentage offensively, and they coughed up 20 of them against the Red Wolves after upsetting UConn in the Maui Invitational. So this Memphis team has been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde in terms of the betting market, whether they're favored, they tend to underperform the market's expectations and vice versa. Do you expect that trend to continue here with Memphis at Clemson, Justin?
Honestly, no. I think this is probably one of those spots coming off the Arkansas State loss, which again graded as a shot quality loss. So no real funny business, nothing to hang your hat on if you're Memphis. Say, oh well, they should have. No, shouldn't have done anything. Expected to lose by 5, lost by 13. So okay, maybe should have been a little bit closer, but I'm assuming when you have a big favorite losing like that, 12.5 point favorite, it kind of can get a little ugly at the end, and the game state doesn't really matter too much. But this team is still pretty ferocious on the offense, and this is probably a good old get up spot. Tough game there with Arkansas State, who is a very legitimate program, takes themselves very seriously, very legitimate offense, really strong rim and three rate. So they can get you if you're not really up for that game. And I would imagine that Memphis was kind of looking forward to this Clemson game. We have them a little bit higher in our rankings over at Shot Quality than what Ken Palm does. So not like the strongest play, but I do think there is a little bit of value here. This team has shown some pretty good qualities, right? So they do shoot the three ball very well. They do attack the rim very well, and they get to that free throw line. Their problems, of course, is they're not shooting enough of the three to really open up their game enough, and then they're not defending the rim well. So we'll have to see how, Clemson's able to manage that. And, they do defend the 3-point line very well, but they're not the most frequent in terms of attacking the rim themselves, sitting at 341st, which was just a 30% rate. So this one's probably going to be a slight edge to Memphis for me.
I'll go opposite end first with Clemson just touting their positive traits so far. Top 10 adjusted defensive efficiency. And you look at the addition of Jaden Zachary from Boston College, adding a ton of ball pressure alongside Chase Hunter, veteran Clemson guard, and help Clemson get to the Elite Eight. I'm still a little bit upset about those Clemson Final Four futures not getting to the window, but I digress, losing to Alabama last season in the tournament. Clemson also top 40 in offensive rebounding percentage. Ian Shefflin, 55th nationally in individual offensive rebounding rate. And Memphis does struggle on the glass.
Yep.
Can Clemson take care of second chance opportunities and turn Memphis over enough to win by 3 possessions or beyond the potential 7-point spread at Littlejohn, one of the tougher places to play among Power 5 college basketball teams? That's where I'm a little bit wary of backing Memphis. Also, you mentioned Memphis outside of the top 3, I guess if you look at percentile, probably bottom 20 percentile in college basketball and 3-point attempt rate, but 3-point percentage third in the country. I wonder if those percentages are still getting a little bit of a Maui bump per se.
Yeah.
Is there, right?
Because they're not taking enough to really hurt them down from maybe what they shot at the MTE. Yeah, I mean, look, they're sitting like top 20 in both off the dribble and catch and shoot 3-point right now in terms of like their offensive shot quality per possession. It feels a little high. It does. I would expect it to come down a little bit, but then also
Tyrese Hunter is shooting 49% from 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's pretty crazy. But the opposite's true on the other side, right? Like I would expect the 3-point percentage numbers against them to come down too, because that's a little high. They're seeing 36% shot quality, expecting 34. So I mean, maybe you like a little under on a Memphis game if all the models and everything sort of see in this elevated scoring, and that's they're not really taking a lot of threes, and they do chase opponents off the 3-point line at a pretty good rate. Not a lot of off the dribble threes, a decent amount of catch and shoot threes. They push opponents to the rim, but they don't defend it well. So we'll see. They have track meet potential. So I would definitely hesitate a bit on total. And I honestly haven't been betting a lot of totals, Eli. I've cut my teeth on spreads all season. So
yeah, I'm with you. It's an interesting look to the under, but right. Tempo, Memphis ranks top 75 in adjusted tempo per KenPom. Clemson can slow it down, and I mean, they rank 316th in adjusted tempo, but if Memphis is shooting the 3 ball and it's sustained at least for this game with their 3-point clip, to me, I expect regression, but if it does sustain itself, at least in this game, you're probably looking at it over. KenPom has the total projected at quick math 143. Tough total to project.
That is a tough total to project. Seeing like Torvik right there at 142, it's going to be. And again, we've seen some. It's tough to gauge these overs right now. I think we've seen some interesting market. I guess troughs and peaks in terms of totals and big spreads, and we're starting to see some of these huge favorites not cover now because they're not as fresh, and then the totals were soaring over because everybody probably had their legs underneath them, and now you're seeing rotations get a little bit deeper because everyone's maybe a little more tired or trying to figure things out heading into conference play. Some unders are starting to really hit, so we'll see. It's been gauging this stuff's so interesting. It's such a dynamic market with so much action and so many, opportunities that there really is a dynamic feel to it.
So lean to Memphis, maybe a slight lean to the under, but no play, it sounds like.
As of now, yeah. I mean, depending on the line. If there's some, overreactions in the market to Memphis losing that game to Arkansas State, which is fair, 13-point loss, but I think, again, this is a spot where they're probably a little low in KenPom for me, which does just inherently give them value on openers and likely the close as well.
Arkansas State, underratedly, or maybe not underrated to the more traditional college basketball better that we're used to, that we speak with on a day-to-day basis. Probably a team that can make a Sweet 16 with the right set of matchups to begin the NCAA tournament if they win the Sun Belt Conference. One big league, but it seems to be after James Madison made the tournament last year, upset Wisconsin in the first round. Arkansas State could at least win a game in the dance. A very, very good mid-major, to say the least. So not really a loss that Memphis should tear up about.
I mean, they only lost to Alabama by 9 points on the road. That's legit. That's what you hope you lose to Alabama by when you're sitting in the outside the top 100 in KenPom. What a game! I mean, they're my Thursday night pick here, so we'll see how they do tonight. So I like them a lot. They're definitely under the radar for a lot of people. Coach Hodgson doing a really good job, just his second year there, and I think they could crack the top 100 in KenPom by the time the year's over.
Speaking of cracking, if my voice cracked there, I'm going to blame it on the long week. I promise I'm not going through puberty at age 30. But Justin, let's dive into the second game on the Saturday card. Noon Eastern tip on CBS. We're going to hear that March Madness music, which means we're getting even closer. I know, to the big dance. Texas A&M at Purdue. I put it in quotes. It's a semi-road game with the game being played in Indianapolis. Obviously, you're going to get a conglomerate of Purdue, Boilermaker Nation at that game versus A&M fans. So take that for what it's worth. KenPom projects this game at Purdue -3. Both teams 8-2 straight up. Boilermakers coming off of the comeback win, down 5 at the break. I almost pulled the trigger on Purdue second half. I think it was -5, down 5 at the break in that game at Mackey. I'm still pissed I didn't. Maryland regressed exponentially in the second half of that game, and Purdue finally started hitting threes. But goes to show you how maybe the market underrated the Boilermakers entering the season, because even without the Zach Edey going off to the NBA, I'm glad Zach Edey has gone from college basketball, but Purdue continues to be a pain in my you-know-what with how they continue to outperform the market's expectations this season, even without Zach Edey. On the flip side, Texas A&M straight up 8-2, and they're coming off of a win on Sunday on a neutral court against a very good, borderline top 25 in my power ratings Texas Tech team. Worth noting that JT Toppin, Texas Tech's maybe their best player, didn't play. The transfer from New Mexico, or one of their best players. You look per CBB analytics, the Boilermakers have faced the best group of offenses collectively of any Division I team. So do we get positive defensive regression from Purdue defensively in this game? So conversely, does Purdue maybe see a little bit of a lift in their performance ratings, with Texas A&M ranking 289th in effective field goal percentage? On the flip side, A&M, they faced a top 60 schedule when it comes to opposing defenses. And now you get a Purdue team that ranks just inside the top, depending on the metric site. You look at, if you pull out priors, Purdue is borderline top 90 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So does A&M potentially see a lift offensively with that in mind? I also think the Aggies are going to have a big advantage on the offensive glass. Henry Coleman ranks 26th in offensive rebounding rate. This is a very experienced A&M team overall, but especially on the front line. And without Edey, Purdue does struggle to keep teams off the offensive glass. And they have yet to face front court like A&M had, like the Aggies have, whether it's Coleman or Anderson off the bench. I'm very high on A&M overall, and I'll get to that big picture here in a moment. But A&M also top 10 in adjusted defensive efficiency. We saw it against Penn State, and we've seen it historically. athletic backcourts, more athletic backcourts than what Purdue has, can give Matt Painter's team fits. And A&M has that with Wade Taylor, the longtime A&M lead guard, and what they added as well in the transfer portal with Phelps from SMU. And post-up defense, last thing from me, Justin, post-up defense going up against Trey Kaufman-Renn, who has been a big part of Purdue outperforming the metrics entering this season. One of the best players in college basketball, not just front court pieces. A&M's post-up defense ranks in the 99th percentile per synergy. So if they slow Kaufman-Renn down from the get-go in this game and start pounding Purdue on the offensive glass, even if their shots aren't falling like they haven't been consistently all season long, I think A&M, with this line being projected on KenPom, Purdue -3, anything around Purdue -2, -3, Aggies are probably a bet for me.
Yeah, I mean, they're an interesting team for sure. I think what we have, our shot quality player data on Texas A&M paints a picture that I believe lines up pretty well with what you're saying. Henry Coleman sitting in the 97th percentile of shot quality points per possession ranks. 77 possessions, not anything crazy, but shot maker as well. Same with CJ Wilcher, who isn't exactly getting a high percentage of possessions, but Wade Taylor and Phelps both honestly draw a little bit of concern for me. I think there's a lot of possessions going to Phelps that aren't, maybe going better than I think expected right now. And, a little bit of early prowess there to start the season. And we've seen a dip, right? Texas Tech just 12 points, Wake Forest 6 points. And they're probably still going to continue to give him the ball. And I think that's a little bit worrisome. Not really developing a lot of spacing, not creating his own shot very well. Some decent success there early in the season, right? Like balled out against Lamar and Texas A&M, East Texas A&M. But I don't know if he's gonna, have the same luck here. This is a team that shot quality does see a little bit lower, ranking them outside of the top 50, right at top 50 in adjusted shot quality. The big difference being that not seeing their defense as strong as maybe will rate in KenPom, right? Sitting at a 0.96 points per possession, expected to be at 1.08. So teams shooting just 29% against them from deep, 6.9% expected to be increased from the post-up. Like you said, one of the best post-up defenses right now should be at 37%. I don't know if this is going to be the exact spot where it all comes crashing down for Texas A&M in that respect, but this is definitely a spot where I think you definitely want to have some concerns. Sitting there 6-4 against the spread. Shot quality spread rating is 2-8, 26% luck differential in their record, expected to be 5-5. But Purdue's overperforming a little bit too. So this isn't exactly my favorite matchup, but I do think the relative strength of the team, I like Purdue here. I do think, we have a little bit of a disagreement. It's kind of fun. Both teams have seen some decent shot making against, like you said, a little bit of a gauntlet from both these teams not offensively, but in terms of the schedule. But the shot making for me, what I've seen from this Texas A&M team, shot quality putting the Texas A&M team in the 4th percentile of shot making and Purdue in the 95th percentile of shot making. Both take good shots, but Texas A&M needs to take good shots or else they're going to be in trouble. So if Purdue can limit them defensively, which they're okay at doing, I do think this could get a little bit difficult. I'm not exactly sure where that's exactly going to happen. Maybe, I suppose, by forcing them into bad mid-range shots or forcing a high level of isolation shots for Purdue, and then they're just offensively sound. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be tough.
If Wade Taylor's chucking up contested threes, that's where you get into a bit of a pickle for Buzz Williams and this Aggies. Offense in general.
He'll happily oblige. He'll take those shots.
Absolutely, and so will Phelps.
Right.
So I don't want to call it a plug your nose play because I think the Aggies, we're, like you said, we're in disagreement, a bit of a disagreement here. I think the Aggies are, shot quality, I get it. And you have, when we talk about college basketball, you always bring up the point, take shot quality with a grain of salt because it doesn't always define the net rating of a team and the ceiling of a team long term. So I teased this earlier on, a Final Four bet that I have. Gross when you look at some of the efficiency and shot quality numbers for A&M. But I'm going to throw out A&M to make the Final Four at plus 1900 at Bet365. Very experienced team. They played a gauntlet like you've talked about. So a couple of those being on a neutral court, somewhat of a road game last week against Texas Tech. So that translates into March Madness. If we recall back in the second round or round of 32 in the Big Dance last year, losing to Houston in overtime, that game could have gone either way. And that was when Jamal Shed was healthy, mind you. Right. So a couple of reasons why I like the Aggies to make a bit of a run of the dance and why I like this number, especially before a big game, mind you, where the number could dip if A&M does pull off the upset. They create a lot of extra possessions, which is extremely valuable when your shot isn't falling, A, against Purdue, B, overall this season, and C, in the Big Dance on a neutral court. Number one in offensive rebounding rate and top 70 in turnovers forced. I know Phelps' shot selection is a bit of an issue, but where he gives Buzz Williams a much different look defensively than what they had alongside Wade Taylor for the last couple of years and Tyrese Radford, who came over with Buzz Williams from Vatech. Phelps is a defensive pest. Yep. One of the best ball pressure guards in the country. And that gives you a completely different mindset defensively when you could force turnovers at the rate that A&M has this season. And Buzz Williams wants A&M to pressure the ball, mind you. This isn't like, okay, Phelps is going to gamble a lot. They pressure the ball and they get out and run in transition. Not the highest pace when you look at adjusted tempo. They're not going to play up tempo for a full 40 minutes, but they do selectively run, especially when they do force turnovers. Yep. I mentioned the schedule that they face, 15th toughest adjusted defensive efficiency overall. So the offensive ceiling, theoretically, outside of the shot quality, should go up. Top 5 in continuity, top 10 in experience, top 60 in bench minutes. So they have the depth to make a run. On a short rest scenario, you play, let's say, a Sweet 16 game on Friday, play that Elite 8 game. I know it's a long way to go looking ahead, but the opportunity bench minutes-wise to make a run in March Madness where it's difficult when you're playing on a short rotation. And I teased this to you before we got started, Justin. You look at similar efficiency profiles for A&M. Texas Tech in 2018, I was on the Red Raiders that year when they lost to Villanova, the eventual title winner in the Elite Eight. Elite defense under Chris Beard and Mark Adams. That was the second go-around for the Beard-Adams tree, per se, at Texas Tech. And then Syracuse in 2013 with Michael Carter-Williams, and they made the Final Four that year. Okay offense and elite defense.
Yeah, look, I think you're onto an interesting, foundation for this team that can really give them the potential to make a run, right? They are shooting terribly, in my opinion. And they're not making good shots, but guess what they do really well? They get the ball and they are going to win the possession battle. And yeah, they're high in, offensive rebounding rate, and that's probably something that you want to see start coming down, right? Because offensive rebounds are, of course, correlated to misses, and the more offensive rebounds you can get, you have to miss the ball, you have to miss the hoop to get an offensive rebound. It's just the way it works. So I would expect that to kind of drop a little bit as the shots start falling. I would, think that when you see a team like Texas A&M, you look at what shot quality is showing on them, and half court transition, all these things rated outside the top 250 right now, but their shot selections in the top 12%. Rebounding is super strong. They get to the line, so they don't really need to be super adept at creating offense in the half court if they get to the line at 42% of their possessions, and they are developing possessions at a rate that outclasses their opponents. They have strong guard play. They're keeping good care of the ball. Their turnover rate is favorable. This is that's the type of stuff that I think can take a team that might not have the sharp shooting and carry them even in bad games. So if this Texas A&M team turns it on, who knows, right? That's a pretty worthwhile gamble. So I do think you're probably getting one of the best points to buy them at. I don't know. I think you probably want to wait for SEC play just to make sure that they show those flashes of being able to really turn it on and overcome adversity, which they'll need to do.
But that's the other part of the conversation with A&M and the SEC overall. This is by far the best conference in college basketball.
Oh, yeah.
I already have a couple futures. Auburn to win the title, which that looks good. And
Auburn to meet Tennessee in the title game feels like it's I'm sure it'll change in a month, but that's what it feels like today.
Yeah, and I got a little bit of a long shot dart in Ole Miss, so that would be if they get to the Final Four, you hedge. Yep. Either way, my point is that best conference in college basketball, do you want to start looking at, and that's non-conference play. So if A&M, I don't think this number is going to get much bigger, but let's say you're like Justin or anybody else watching or listening to the podcast. Okay, I want to wait. Maybe you do get a better buy low number if A&M struggles in conference play, and then like we've seen in non-conference, thrives on a neutral court and somewhat of a road environment like we saw against Texas Tech and potentially Purdue, which, again, translates to the big dance.
I think also, and maybe the last point on this, but I think especially in these big powerhouse conferences where teams kind of just beat up on each other,
right,
you get like such an isolated view on them, and the market can be very, very off in either direction. We've seen it a lot the other way with like the Mountain West, and everyone thinks they're so good because they just beat each other up by like 1 point, 2 points, these crazy good battles, and then they've all of a sudden gotten into the the non-conference play, the tournament play, and fallen apart. I think the SEC is going to be opposite, right? We're going to see these really close battles, and we're like, wait, is anyone really that good? They're just playing 1 point games. It's going to turn out everyone's really good. Everyone's really good. And the SEC is going to have 6 teams into the Sweet 16, and we're going to be like, what? And we're like, yeah, we talked about this in December. This
they're going to have
really
6 teams. They're going to have 6 teams in the Final Four, and there are only 4 allowed.
Exactly. No, there's a real possibility we see 3 teams from the SEC in the Final Four. Houston sneaks in with them. Big East doesn't get any representation. Wouldn't shock me at all the way it looks right now, but college basketball looks so different every 2 weeks. This is going to be, I think that's something to look forward to because, again, conference play, you stop getting the ability to gauge the conference against other groups. And so that's what really creates a lot of value when you get to March Madness, because those who can, repiece the puzzle together and create the proper hierarchy and actually what conferences are good, what teams are actually legitimate, what wins were legitimate, that's who can come in and say, no, like this 3-point line should be 15. And then, it's a blowout. And it's like, how did you know that? It's like, well, because the SEC has been amazing all year. And you think those 1-point wins mean everyone's bad. It means everyone's good. So
100%. And last thing I promise on A&M that we'll get to,
SEC is great combo. So
yeah, well, this is not SEC related, but Clemson last year, a team that I bet to get to the Final Four, they went to the Elite Eight. I decided not to hedge. Others that tailed did and made a profit. So worthwhile conversation to be had. Just 2 different teams, apples and oranges, but variance is a part of the game with college basketball teams. So you look at a team like Clemson, veteran-laden team. They had the pieces to make a run when you think about, okay, they don't turn the ball over. They were fairly elite, upper echelon in the country at limiting second chance opportunities. So conversely to A&M not the best on the defensive glass, but they generate those second chance shots. With those factors in mind and an experienced team that, like we touched on, this is the similar part to the Aggies. Dominant in non-conference play. Now we'll see if A&M beats Purdue, but Clemson was 12-1 or 11-1 in non-conference play last year, and then in conference 11-9, and they wanted Alabama. So you have the resume of, okay, we can win on a neutral, we can win in road environments. We struggle in a relatively competitive ACC last season. Then come the tournament, we see them get maybe some breaks, which is a part of the tournament, and they get to the Elite Eight.
Yep.
Right?
Winning any tournament, any MTE, any March Madness, getting to the second weekend, getting to the final weekend, you don't only need to be good, you need to get lucky. And there's no doubt about it that you are, like, winners are both really good, playing at their highest level, and then also getting lucky. And you have to sustain that for multiple games. So I don't know. I mean, that's why, across sports, usually like player incentives are tied to things that you can really control, like what place in the standings you get rather than how it really goes in the playoffs. Because basketball is like the one sport where playoffs can actually be truly predictive, but still it's just one game. I wish March Madness was a series of 3. How cool would that be? I don't want to expand it.
I don't want it.
I know, but like imagine the idea of having like a little bit more. I love the NBA. I think the NBA playoffs, people hate them, but like it is the most predictive playoffs there is. The winner of the NBA championship is the winner. Like I don't think any other pro sport has a better claim to saying we're the best team because of how sporadic and variable other sports series are. Like baseball's crazy. Football is one game. College basketball, one game. I know,
but that's the best part.
I know it's the best part. It is the best part by far. But the best part of it can be that sometimes the best team doesn't win. That's okay. That's sports, right? That's why we love it, because if the best team won every time, just wrap it up and hand the next 10 World Series to the Dodgers, right? But that's not what is happening. It's what makes sports so beautiful. But it is definitely, antithetical with what is creating an environment to actually select the best. March Madness does not do that, and that is why we love it. That's okay, but that's college basketball. It's crazy. It's craziness. And if you're still here hanging out with Eli and us, that very, very well. So.
That rant presented to you by the Yankees not re-signing Juan Soto, I believe. I know. We don't want to talk about it and probably have to move on to the next game. But with that in mind,
composure is a professional aspect I try to have. So
let's shift over. You heard the pause, or at least you saw it if you're watching on YouTube. Let's shift over to the second game in Indianapolis. Somewhat of a neutral court, but home court advantage more than a bit to Butler, with Wisconsin taking on the Bulldogs. KenPom projecting this line at Wisconsin -3. Both teams coming off their fair share of losses in a row. Wisconsin highlighting the Badgers first, with Greg Gard's team losing their third straight consecutive game at Illinois on Tuesday night, and Butler falling to North Dakota State as a 13-point home favorite. So the spot favors the Badgers just with the 3 losses in a row to me, and I have a slight lean with the total for this game. But what does shot quality say, Justin?
Interesting one here for SQ. Wisconsin sitting there right around a little higher than what KenPom's going to have. So we have them as our 18th rated team right now. Kind of liking what they're doing a little bit in terms of their offense, specifically sitting at the, right there, top 10 in terms of adjusted shot quality, 12th to be exact. Kind of impressed with how their spacing has looked, how few shots they're allowing at the rim on defense. 3-point efficiency looks good, and they're keeping good care of the ball. So I'm a little bit, partial towards Wisconsin here, sitting in that rating. And then Butler at 78 for us. So pretty in line with what the market's going to expect, but slight edge on Wisco, expecting them maybe to be 7-4 instead of 8-3, but that's pretty normal for winning teams. Butler also expected to be 6-4 instead of 7-3. But the worry for me with Wisconsin, and I don't know if you agree with this, Eli, the spacing that they've been allowing their opponents to develop is a massive red flag, and not just because it's literally popping off of my screen, but it's been an issue, right? They've had a couple games here that they've lost. In all 3 of their last games, they were undefeated. They've dropped Michigan, Marquette, and Illinois in a row. Haven't won in December yet. But those teams are pretty adept at creating and abusing defensive spacing when given it. So how's this going to go for Butler? I do think, you want to talk spots? This is a get-right spot for Wisconsin. And I'd imagine that I'm going to end up getting taxed on liking them enough that I won't be able to play it. I won't be able to reasonably take it. KenPom sitting at 3 points. I'm going to assume we're going to see 5.
Closing 5. I would agree. Probably opens 3.5, and then come
By
Friday
time
night.
Limits are lifted on Saturday morning. It'll be 4.5.
Right, and then it will close 5, and Butler will win outright per usual.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly, big go. So What I opened up with for this game, a little bit of a lean for me towards the under. I don't know if I'm going to play it, but KenPom projects the total at 139. Butler can't control the pace, I believe, in this game. 205th in adjusted tempo. If they're able to limit Wisconsin's transition opportunities, John Tanji, the Colorado State transfer, so effective at getting to the rim. On the flip side, I wonder how this is going to go, because you mentioned how Wisconsin allows teams to space the floor, and that's because Steven Crowell is somehow still playing college basketball, and he plays drop coverage, or Greg Gard, I guess, schemes up drop coverage defensively, where Butler's going to get their fair share of three-point looks. Thad Matta, an experienced veteran head coach and then some, is going to be able to draw up open three-pointers, and Butler, top 15 nationally in three-point shooting, just over 40%. But when do we see that number start to dip, just by the nature of shooting variance on a NBA court? Does that take effect on this Butler three-point shooting overall? We saw it come into play a little bit at Houston, especially in the first half last week, where Butler got down by double digits. But Butler does have shooters. Pat McCaffrey transferring away from his father. Talk about daddy issues. I don't know what's going on there, but he could shoot. Butler has the shooting to really create problems for Wisconsin's drop coverage defense with Crowell. The question is, do we see that dip in efficiency eventually? Does it come around in this game? So that's why I kind of leaned under. If Butler, A, controls the pace, and B, does see a little bit of negative variance from behind the arc, you're probably right. Wisconsin wins by double digits, and the line closes Wisconsin -5. But overall, stay away game for me. Just a lot of variance issues one way or the other that I don't feel comfortable betting this game.
I understand that. Yeah, for me, it's Wisconsin or nothing, expecting that tax to come in and kind of just make it a little tough. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little worried about both of these teams in terms, I think, of how they do playing, I guess, bad squads, right? I don't know how much familiarity you have with what Evan Mia has been up to the last year or so in terms of like some of these ratings of how teams do in certain scenarios. And honestly, Wisconsin's been one of those teams that his data says beats up on bad teams and struggles a little bit against good teams. And Butler likes to play up against the good teams and also struggles against worse teams. So that would mean a little bit of that advantage towards Butler in this scenario, maybe expecting them to really get in there and play a little tough. I do think this is going to be right there around 4. It feels right. I'm probably going to struggle to play it as well. If I can get a 2.5, 3, I'll probably be there. But this Saturday is loaded, so maybe something slips under the watch. I don't know though. I would expect with college football kind of quieter now, this is going to be a very sharp Saturday.
And you can check out all the best odds and promos, sports betting promos over at thelines.com, over at Bet365. Wisconsin 25-1 to make the Final Four. Like you touched on ad nauseum there, or at least highlighted the key points, the cliff notes. I have no interest in Wisconsin long-term this season. They've beaten up on bad teams. Guard play experience-wise, even though I like Kamari McGee and I like the front court, you have an experienced big center in Steven Crowell. Drop coverage in the tournament doesn't always work when you're not a physical defense, which we saw come into play for Wisconsin getting upset last year in the first round of 64 against James Madison. Yeah. On to the Bet365 game of the week. That's what I'm coining this game. And big rivalry game in Kentucky, 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. Louisville at Rupp against the Cats. KenPom projecting Kentucky as an 11-point home favorite. Justin Perri, had the displeasure of watching Louisville cover 34 plus freaking minutes against Duke on Sunday before Duke and their defense took over late and covered the 9-point spread, which I got, by the way, over at Bet365. Not fun. Yeah. You were on Louisville?
Oh, yeah, because we love Louisville over shot quality, and it's killing me.
Tell me why.
Well, very, very plainly, Eli, they're getting good looks. They're getting good looks, right? That's not the problem. Their shot selection is 28th in the nation. Their spacing is 13th in the nation. All right. They're rebounding rates look pretty good. Their rim and three rate, 23rd in the nation. Their spacing looks great. They're forcing turnovers. They're efficient at attacking the rim. But, they're only shooting 33% in the mid-range. We're expecting 49%. They're only shooting 27% from deep. We're expecting 36%. I mean, this is an efficiency differential of, close to 9% of points being left on the table. Imagine if they scored 9% more points on every possession. That is not a joke. So eventually that's got to kind of come around. We don't really like the D word. No one's really due for anything. But the fact of the matter is that the process in which this team is developing their shots and defending opponents gives way to winning more often than not. And I am going to continue losing money on them, or they're going to start winning games, Eli. There's no if, and, or but about it. You do not sit third in adjusted shot quality and not figure it out. Either the shot quality numbers are going to go down and they're going to stop developing good looks and they're going to miss those two, or they're going to start winning. There's no other way that's going to happen. Those are the only two possibilities.
I agree. Justin, this was my favorite handicap on the Saturday card.
Let's go.
Yeah, I don't want to call it as you touched on, no one is due for anything. Nothing is a lock in any sport for that matter. Just watch the last two Monday Night Football games if you had either of the dogs. But both teams, just looking at this thing broadly for a second, both teams coming off losses against the spread in a look-ahead spot to this rivalry game. Louisville almost losing outright to UTEP, which ranks 128th in adjusted shot quality. Both teams, as you noted, top 15 in shot quality offensively, and not very surprising when Louisville ranks 6th in three-point attempt rate. So Pat Kelsey wants to run a modern offense. Louisville is doing it, but they're not hitting shots. Just plain and simple, 27.1%.
Just missing.
Right, just missing open shots. 341st in three-point efficiency across Division I college basketball. Now, here's the really tough part of the handicap. Is Kentucky going to get bet up to the spot where Louisville is valuable per the numbers? Yes. But depth-wise, like we saw against Duke, does Louisville have enough run in them for a full 40 minutes or 40 minutes plus to cover a double-digit point spread against a dare I say, top 5, top 10 offense, especially when you look at the sets, the beautiful sets that Mark Pope runs. Yep. So Louisville with the injury on their injury front, no Pryor out for the season. Corin Johnson, the Washington transfer, also out long-term, and so is Trior, which has really affected Louisville's rebounding at both ends. Also affects scoring when you look at the combined numbers for all three of those players. Kentucky, though, this is the interesting part of the cap. Kentucky allowing opponents to shoot 26.3% from deep, and that's not all. Opponents are shooting 27.6% on unguarded threes.
Yep.
You look at Chucky Hepburn. If Lamont Butler doesn't go for Kentucky, that is a big advantage for Hepburn and this Louisville offense until Mark Pope switches Otega Owe onto Hepburn, which we saw is going to happen eventually, like he did against Gonzaga in the second half when he flipped Owe onto Nembhard and the game completely flipped in the second half, along with some beautiful coaching adjustments from Mark Pope overall. When is Jackson Robinson going to get exposed defensively? When is Andrew Carr going to get exposed defensively? It's hit or miss there because he is a really good rebounder in space. But Jackson Robinson, even though he played the best by far game at both ends of the court against Gonzaga, especially in the second half and in overtime, Hepburn would have a plus matchup offensively if Butler, who's a pest defensively and then some, is still out for Kentucky at home. Really difficult game to go against Kentucky at Rupp, but this is the plug your nose spot if you're looking for one on Saturday.
I mean, Louisville in Haslametrics, shout out Eric Haslam, who I know is a good friend of the show. Away from home rating, first, 5.46. Consistency rating, 340th, minus 12.29. Momentum, 350th, minus 3.22. So you try figuring it out, listener at home. Then, yeah, this is a little bit of a roll of the dice. I think But that is often a stigmatized term in betting, but I think it is stigmatized because we are so often focused on the favorite. And when you have a roll of the dice, I love an underdog. I love a good price on a variable opportunity, right? I think that if you're going to take a little Louisville, if you're going to bet them, Eli, you cannot do yourself the disservice of not at least sprinkling on the money line, because
No.
there is a reality. There is a reality where they can win this game. There is just a reality, and I would bet I would assume if you think the spread has value, you should get that same little bit of value on a money line. I'll have it. I'll have it for like a tenth of a unit, real small. But look, they are developing good shots. The minute they start to fall, it'll be interesting. But again, the problem is, especially with shot quality, which really does use only game data. When you do lose a player who has been a big part of like the first third of the season, you do have to take a big grain of salt. So so they're high up, but we're definitely going to discount them a bit. We're not just going to go in blind and say, okay, well, nothing crazy's happened that would change these rankings, right? No, something obviously crazy has happened, and you can't just look at the 3-point rates anymore because they're not the same team that they were in the first 7 games. So tough game to bet. Very tough game to bet. That's the final word.
Kentucky, by the way, plus 450 to make the Final Four at Bet365 Sportsbook. And mind you, with the Bet365 early payout offer, you're a winner if your team goes up by 18 points or more with the instant payout offer on college basketball straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners at Bet365. Available for all users. Remember that the first-time customer deposit bonus, which is where you could sign up with the promo code the lines one word, and receive $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 wager, is only available for new customers. Download the app and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. If you want to be a square and bet Kentucky when they go up by 20 points in the first half and Louisville shooting 10% from 3, you're going to win your bet early on is what we're telling you. So listen, Justin and I are going to crunch to the numbers. Louisville is going to be a bet when they get up to plus 14 pregame, and then they're going to get blitzed in the first half and somehow backdoor cover on a miracle Chucky Hepburn shot with 14 seconds left in regulation.
Let's get it. I'm ready. Script written. We got the writers on it right now.
All right. Let's move on to the number 1 team in college basketball. 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The Tennessee Volunteers, second true road game of the season. Their first one was at Louisville, where they blew them out against a healthy Cardinals team, mind you. This one coming at Illinois. KenPom lines this one at Tennessee -3. We've seen it. You saw it live and in person, where Rick Barnes has found the best replacement possible for Dalton Knecht in Chaz Lanier, who, by the way, is a much better defender than Knecht.
Oh, he can move, dude.
Yeah, he is athletic and then some. So how do you cap this one? Is this the fade the number 1 ranked team on the road spot, or a little bit trickier than that?
Well, we just got that. So I've had the pleasure of watching the number 1 team in college basketball 3 times already this season. I saw them just this week again at Madison Square Garden for the Jimmy V Classic, and they did not cover. And I took Miami, and it closed like 14.5. I think they won by 14, opened like 16.5. So I think that ship might have sailed. I think that one's gone. I think okay, they're number 1. Maybe they're not that good though. And Miami was also a little bit unlucky. So it makes a lot of sense to see them not cover that. I liked Miami's fight at the end of that game. They didn't really give up. Now, Illinois here, I do think this is going to be a very well-priced game. I don't think you're going to get that overreaction. You're not really getting the unranked, down in their luck team. You're getting a team in Illinois that's also going to have very strong market share. If anything, I'm looking at Tennessee because this is just going to be a well-modeled game. And I think they probably have a little bit more of an ability to break the models, right? In terms of just like absolutely destroying their expected performances, going above and beyond what everyone thinks they can do. I mean, they absolutely dismantled Baylor. It was so impressive.
That was such a tough spot, though, for Baylor. We have to account for that.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And they had the cakewalk of playing Virginia. but I don't know, between Zakai and the
Yeah.
size inside and just the movement of the ball. Rick Barnes is very smart. I actually got to talk to him for 5 minutes at the Bahamas airport while we were waiting. I had literally holding a bag of Wendy's French fries and a shake in my hand. I'm like, oh, that's Rick Barnes. And I said, what's up?
I haven't had a Frosty. I'm not allowed to get food from fast food restaurants, according to my wife. Gotta eat healthy. But I have been craving a Frosty for years, man.
Just make one. Just go grab some vanilla ice cream and get that blender going. Get it done.
It's not the same.
I understand. But, besides the point, I do think Tennessee is probably kind of valuable here just because even as the number one, coming off of a non-cover, maybe not blowing out Miami. That's Madison Square Garden, though. So it's like a little tough to do that. I think this is probably a good spot. Saturday spot, coming off of their, last little neutral game here. Give me Tennessee. I do think this team's going to be, we're going to be talking about them come that first weekend in April. Whether they get to that final game, I don't know. But I do think that's the semifinals for sure.
Yeah, I was going to bring up some points with Tennessee last year. Arguably should have beaten Purdue in the Elite Eight, but I digress. Another conversation for a smaller slate of games. So I thought by the way, your handicap, I couldn't have said it better myself. Tennessee, number one defense per KenPom, definitely can travel. We touched on the handicap of the SEC overall. Much better conference and then some than the Big Ten, so take that for what it's worth. Vols allowing, this is interesting, just juxtaposed with Kentucky. Vols allowing the 9th worst three-point shooting clip to the opposition in college basketball at 26.3%. But unlike Kentucky, opponents are shooting well above average on unguarded looks. Over 40%. Or just at 40%. So Illinois, you look at their three-point shooting, especially with Jakic Jonas, really, really elite, uber-talented freshman wing for Illinois. Had a huge game against Wisconsin. He's shooting nearly 45% from three. Like, when do we see Illinois struggle, or do we see at this game Illinois struggle against a much more physical defense than what they faced on a neutral on Thanksgiving against Arkansas? Much more physical defense than what they faced against Wisconsin's drop coverage on Tuesday night. You're going to hear it on X, or you're going to see it on X, and probably hear it on another podcast or X videos that pop up in your feed. Fade the undefeated team, top-ranked team on the road. I'm with you. The market's going to be spot on in this game. I'm not going to bet Tennessee, and maybe we do just see naturally, okay, variance goes against Tennessee in this game on the road. Illinois gets the upset. Sure. I told you so. It's Vols or pass for me.
Yep. Gotta be. I think it's a really good spot to buy in on a team that is just going to continue to prove themselves. So I would assume, and this is how I'll phrase it best, if you were to come back and bring the end of season efficiencies that Tennessee and Illinois are going to have into this game, that you would not get the spread you get this week. It'll be bigger towards Tennessee because Tennessee is better than what people think right now. They had a tough game. They were in a tough spot. Miami, there's so much psychology that goes into it, right? Big spreads, Madison Square Garden, those things just don't really mesh, right? For me, I'm assuming that Rick Barnes isn't out there like, hey, cover 15.5, guys. It's like, no, let's get it home, keep it around 10, try to keep it, 3-4 possessions so it doesn't get to a foul scenario late. Just what these teams play for. And I think, so that's one of the earliest lessons I learned in sports betting when I was really getting into it is like, you want to understand a little bit of like some of the psychology of what a team is doing. Like a lot of times teams go out there to win the game a lot, so smaller spreads by that matter are just that much safer. Right. And we see it a lot in every sport. Sometimes the favorite just does not care to play the spread. They just care about winning by 1 point. And so at Madison Square Garden, it's a little different than a 6.5 point spread, against Illinois. That's, within the realm of just get it home, right? A little less so than 15. So I like that a lot more for this Tennessee team. I think I'm always weary of big spreads. Back in the day when I was doing just modeling, I would literally cut out any spread over like 17 points just because the variability just too high. You just wasn't going to get that same end behavior in a game to really finish it out. And, the teams end up not playing for the best shot in the last 2 minutes. They're milking the clock or just trying to get home. And that's almost impossible to handicap. So give me games that stay in contention to the last minute, 6.5 point spreads, 9.5 point spreads, 3.5 point spreads. I'll take those. I would guess if you look at my career as a bettor, I do much better on those than things in double digits. I would assume most do.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. One last thing on this matchup, really intriguing piece, component, variable to handicap and watch for really is Keelan Boswell, veteran college guard, transferring over from Arizona after a couple seasons, going up against Ziegler, one of the best on-ball defenders, especially, overall, but really, really disrupts opposing point guard play. It is worth noting, Boswell, super small sample size, but Tennessee, they lost to Arizona a couple of years ago on a neutral court. That was when Arizona surprised, had a number 1 seed, I want to say, in Tommy Lloyd's first season down in Tucson. Boswell played 8 minutes against Ziegler, 2 turnovers, 8 assists. Just something worth noting because Boswell, 18% turnover rate this year, but if he does keep the turnovers down against Ziegler, Illinois is going to be able to operate very efficiently in the half court. But I think we're both in agreement. Tennessee's defense, if you're going to pick one, is the side to lean on or lean toward if you're trying to bet this game. But either way, doesn't appear like Justin or I will have a big market advantage or edge with our numbers compared to the market. A few more games to get to. Big one at MSG. Are you going to this one? Gonzaga and UConn, top 20 matchup on Saturday night.
Look, I have such a principled thing that I don't like to pay Knicks ticket prices for college games. I can go see like 10 to 15 low major games in the area for the price of that one ticket. And I would be in the second deck, 15th row. It's not really worth it. Especially in New York City where UConn has just such a massive base. Like if it was, Gonzaga against Tennessee, I would be there because the prices would be, 65% lower. UConn is a New York City school at the end of the day. Stores to NYC is such a direct pipeline. I know so many UConn kids who come here, Connecticut and New York City, very, very familiar with each other. And, obviously a lot of Connecticut's population density is along the eastern seaboard and they commute to New York. It's almost suburban. So no, it's going to be a heavy UConn crowd. I'll watch from home. It'll be a great game, but not worth it at MSG prices. You can go see St. John's Marquette for like $30 and sit in like the 7th row of the first deck, or you can go to this for like $150 and sit in the second deck. I think you just have to have your priorities straight. I get it. It's a classic. It's the Hall of Fame game, but I'm just such a sicko that I value the Manhattan versus the St. Peter's almost as much as the Gonzaga versus UConn. And some people might be disgusted and turn the podcast off after that one, but that's who I am. So I got to stick with it.
I respect it. Not only looking for plus EV bets in the college basketball betting market, but plus EV deals in the ticket market as well. Gotta get a sponsorship there, Justin. But my cap for this game, briefly here, Gonzaga trying to bounce back after blowing the double-digit lead to Kentucky last Saturday night in Seattle. Really bad loss for Gonzaga, just because you mentioned it. Now you travel, essentially playing on the road in a very pro Huskies environment. It's going to be 80% full with UConn fans at the least. And listen, UConn has looked a lot better of late. I know it came against Baylor at home, no Edgecombe, and at Texas, which was outperforming, or at least drastically mispriced in the market in that game. I was shocked looking back. I didn't have a ton of time to cap on Sunday, but I was kind of surprised that the market favored the spot that much, with Texas being favored by a point juiced at home. So UConn blew them out in that game, but essentially a home spot where they'll probably close as a dog. And you look at Gonzaga's three-point shooting splits. They've allowed opponents to shoot just 24.9% from three, but then you look at per synergy, how opponents have shot on unguarded threes, 28.9%. So that's like Kentucky, where, and I know they just faced off, ironically, if Gonzaga gives up open threes, and this isn't an elite defense by any stretch, UConn theoretically is going to hit shots and can shots from deep. You look at their three-point shooting splits this season, whether it's Alex Caravan, who, by the way, is healthy, came back for the Texas game. Solo Ball, shooting around 45% from deep this season, and Liam McNeely, the five-star freshman, the three of those guys have combined to shoot 43% from behind the arc. UConn could easily crater Gonzaga's 3-point defense to the extreme at MSG where they're comfortable playing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to do with Gonzaga because the market is going to favor Gonzaga in this game, undoubtedly. I just wonder where the line closes.
That's the question of the episode. Where does this line close? If I'm gonna guess, I'm gonna say Gonzaga -4.5 is
Really?
Yeah. And maybe
So
5.
you think right in line with KenPom?
Yeah, I think, and KenPom's a little high on Connecticut, but I just think the market's going to be high on them. And then I think the reports of like how strong the crowd is going to like drive it to the close late. I would imagine it's sitting probably like -5.5, and like in the leading hours it shifts down to 5, 4.5. Like literally last minute shift towards Connecticut a bit. I like Gonzaga though. I do think the market's going to be wrong. Gonzaga is the number 1 team in shot quality for a reason. They are well and above everyone else. They are playing up when they play good teams. UConn is struggling against good opponents. They were expected to lose to Baylor without Edgecombe. So imagine he plays, right? Like our shot quality numbers had it as a loss for UConn. I'm not super sold on them. I was early in the season, but you got to adapt quickly. I don't think they're raising another banner. It just isn't the team. I think Hurley knows it himself. It's just they don't have that feel. They're going to lose at MSG to this Gonzaga squad. And I think it has a chance to not be pretty. I think there's a real shot they lose by 8, 9, 10 points. It just gets away from them late. It doesn't really mean anything. It's 5, 6 points in the last minute and a half, and then it finishes at 10, and UConn bettors are sour because they didn't cover at the last minute because of fouls and everything. But that's likely how I see it going down.
They were lucky to cover against Baylor. So if anybody bet UConn against Baylor and then conversely bets UConn and gets a bad beat, well, it evens out. So a couple points on your side, though, Justin. Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed, if they get into foul trouble against Ike, look out, because then Gonzaga's going to play inside out, and UConn's perimeter defense and UConn overall defensively has not looked good, not even close to what they've been physicality-wise over the last couple of years, winning back-to-back national championships yet. They're not going to get priced like it in this game, but in the Final Four futures market, Huskies 4-1 to make the Final Four, definitely overvalued there. Gonzaga 3-1. I just worry, last thing here on this game, well, 2 things. Whoever controls the pace, if UConn is able to slow it down and they want to play at a slower tempo, keep Gonzaga more so in the half court, probably looking at a tighter game, whether they have a shot to backdoor or even win the game outright. But if Gonzaga is getting looks in transition and UConn is, for some reason, off from 3, whether it's just variance or what, because Gonzaga's gotten plenty of positive variance defensively from behind the arc, as I mentioned, that'll play a big role, the tempo, pace in this game in terms of who covers, which team covers. But stay away game for me. I'm excited to watch it, no doubt about it. But sounds like you're on Gonzaga.
Oh yeah, I will be on Gonzaga. They're I think they're the team that likely, between them and Houston, who ends up messing with that SEC triumvirate come March.
On to a couple sprinkles. The Bet365 sprinkles of the week. Made that one up, but let's roll with it. 8 p.m. Eastern time tip. We have number 13, undefeated, the Oklahoma Sooners, led by Porter Moser, taking on Okie State, the Oklahoma State Pokes. Neutral court game at Oklahoma City. The Thunder, the arena where the Thunder play, that's where this one is set in Oklahoma. And then we also have a 9 p.m. Eastern time tip on Bronco TV. This one is not nationally televised anywhere. It's on the Boise State Broncos website if you're curious. St. Mary's against Boise on a neutral court in Idaho. So going to let you quickly handicap these, and I'll share a few notes on them as well.
Yeah, so Boise's one of these teams right now, Eli, that is very high in the shot quality standing, sitting. Honestly, probably higher than most would expect. What they're like, they've lost a few games, right? So when you are sitting at 5-3, it's tough to be what is a top 15 team in SQ, but we have them at 7-1. So whenever you have the type of disparity Just going to keep it really simple. You want to be buying in on this team, expected to beat Washington State. So coming off of a loss that Shot Quality saw as an 8-point win, just some cold shooting, not getting a lot of these big spreads home. The Utah Tech, they didn't cover Shot Quality, expect them to. Lost to Boston College on neutral. Shot Quality thought it was a 14-point win. So just about as down in their luck as they can get right now. This is a team that defends the 3-point line very well. I think buying in on them and this game is a home run spot for me. And then a little less so here for Oklahoma against Oklahoma State. This Oklahoma team is very consistent. That's one of my favorite things about them. They just play the same time in, time out, sitting 33rd in shot quality. Really good again, defending the three, good in transition, attack the rim well, shoot well, force turnovers, get to the line, shoot the free throws well. The only game where they didn't look good was that Louisville loss. So I'm pretty confident in them. Looked great against all the sort of lesser opponents. That tie against the close loss against Providence was expected to be a win. Close win was expected to be a big win. But again, I like this team a lot. I think there is real reason to take them in the interstate battle here against Oklahoma State, who has been a little bit lucky themselves. They beat Miami. That was one of those games that Miami was expected to win and gave us reason to be betting on Miami. Well, the same reason should tell you to be betting against Oklahoma State. Only expected to beat Seton Hall by 1 point. And so there's another massive red flag for the Cowboys. So let's get the Sooners home. I think that's another good Saturday spot.
If you're just watching college basketball for the sake of trying to find this year's Perri Ellis, like how is he playing college basketball still? Devo Davis is still playing college basketball.
Yeah, get me out of this year, Eli. I cannot wait until we lose 2 years this year, essentially, right? So it's just so much of that purity. The age limit's going to drop from like 24 and a half to 22 and a half, and you're going to lose honestly some of the grown men that are playing in college right now, and that's you got to call it what it is. Some of these teams, again, Janai Broome is
ageism.
It's not ageism. Look,
I'm kidding.
Athletes are biologically more advanced in their ages, just naturally. That's how it works. They are on the end of the maturity that makes them stronger, bigger, faster for their ages than anyone else. That's just literally what's going on. But no, this is college basketball. 24-year-olds. I'm just ready for it not to be as, dominated by upper level talent. A little bit less of a disparity between the best and the worst players is not bad.
All right, a couple other notes from you.
Right, Yap Perri. They call me Yap Perri.
I'll let you get off your soapbox there. with the COVID year for college basketball finally ending. But Jeremiah Fears, one of the best freshmen in the country, if you haven't watched the Sooners, I do think they're a little overvalued, a point that I brought up a lot when it comes to three-point variance defensively in particular. Their opponents have shot under 29% from three. Oklahoma State can shoot it. I mentioned Devo Davis. I know he hasn't shot it well, but historically, and Bryce Thompson, who only played under 10 minutes. I think that was because early foul trouble in the first half, and then it was a blowout in the second half. Assuming there is no injury that wasn't reported, I do think if Davis and Thompson are hitting shots, maybe a little of defensive regression coming for the Sooners, but not really much more than that for me within the cap to make it a play. St. Mary's Boise is a tough handicap. Mitchell Saxon, if he stays out of foul trouble, that's the difficult part of this because he has gotten into foul trouble, I want to say, in 3-4 of his the Gales' 10 games this season. But if he's able to match up against a more undersized Tyson Dagenhart and the Boise front court that runs as tall as 6'8", still really athletic, and Dagenhart is one of the best mid-major players in college basketball, but he's reliant, not really a floor-spacing big, more so scoring mid-range and at the rim between those two areas of the court. And Buchanan can't space the floor, but still a freshman going up against more of an experienced St. Mary's team, even after losing Jefferson to Iowa State. That Iowa State team looks like potentially one of the best in the country. But with this handicap, lean for me with St. Mary's, not much more than that.
That's fair. Again, they are really good. The defense, in terms of just limiting those 3-point attempts, kind of, the joke is like
Randy
St.
Bennett,
Mary's,
that's a staple.
Yeah, the joke is like, when St. Mary's decides you're not scoring anymore, you're not. But I do think that the Boise State offense can get through that. So we'll see how it goes. Should be another great. And this whole Saturday. Just lock yourself in your room and get 7 screens and don't move for 12 hours. So
over under 4.5 Frosties.
For me personally,
on Saturday.
I don't know. How much lactate can I swallow? I mean, I'm 32 years old. I can't down them like I used to, Eli. But no, definitely over. Always take.
Wow.
Yeah, give me that. I mean, it's light work. I could do it. I just might not feel too good later.
Yeah, I think you're gonna throw up by the time.
No pain, no gain, baby. You know, that's the type of guy I am.
Well, maybe you'll get the Wendy's sponsorship.
Exactly.
If we have like a Barstool Cave with us watching college basketball.
You call me up. I will be there. I will be drinking the Frosties. I got you.
All right. Fair enough. He is Justin Perri at Justin Perri 8 on X, college basketball betting analyst for Shot Quality. I'm Eli Hershkovich. Big thanks to the Bet365 odds board for helping us out on the show. And thelines.com. Remember to check out the best sports betting promos at thelines.com, particularly the Bet365 promo, the early payout offer, where if your college basketball bet, your team per se, individually on a single game basis, or a leg in your parlay goes up by 18, that leg is graded as a winner, or that bet is graded as a winner. And you could also sign up to get $200 in bonus bets for first-time customers with your first $5 bet using promo code THELINES when signing up for Bet365 Sportsbook. So for Justin and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Beat the Closing Number. Good luck with your college basketball bets.